Amazing. All right, my name's Olivia, and thank you guys so much for joining us tonight at the Center for Justice and Law. We're so excited to have you guys here. And a special thank you to Janaki Rampura for this art installment titled Entering the Maze of Eating and Connection. If you guys have yet to interact with it, please feel welcome to interact with it after this event. A special note, we do have a donation for the CJL. You have to go to hamline.edu/giving and specifically specify that you want to donate to the CJL. And now I will pass it on to Hannah.
Hi, everyone. I'm Hannah Brower. I'm also a CJL student worker. Thank you to the Creative Writing Program, English and Communications Program, and Environmental Studies Program for sponsoring tonight, along with the Center for Justice and Law and the Hamline Environmental Education Project. I'm going to briefly read the Hamline land acknowledgement, and then we'll do introductions and dive right into programming. Hamline University acknowledges that the land on which we gather and refer to as Minnesota is the traditional and unceded territory of the Dakota and Ojibwe. Minnesota comes from the Dakota name for this region, Minnesota Makote, the land where the water reflects the skies. We pay respect to the citizens of not only those tribes, but others as well, both past and present, and their continuing relationship to their ancestral lands. Making this recognition expresses gratitude and appreciation to those whose territory we reside on and honors the Indigenous people who have been existing with and on the land from time immemorial. This long-standing history is significant as land acknowledgements do not exist in past tense or historical context. Colonialism, appropriation, and genocide have relevant real-time realities. We need to build mindfulness regarding the source of our present land privilege, understand the long-standing history from which it comes, and seek to reconcile our place within both. Hamline as an institution and community will hold itself accountable as an Indigenous partner by working stridently to amplify, address, and counter the historical and contemporary injustices that continue to impact Indigenous people individually, systematically, and structurally. Now, I am very pleased to introduce the man of the hour, Paul Bogard, who is a English professor at Hamline University, as well as the co-director of the Environmental Studies program, and of course, author of The End of Night and the Reason We're All Here Today, Solastalgia, an anthology of emotion in a disappearing world. Paul?
All right. Thank you, Hannah. Of course, as you can probably tell, a really wonderfully timed cold that blew into town a couple days ago and has left me coughing a bunch, and it's kind of killed my throat, so I forgive my hoarseness a little bit here. I want to start by saying thank you. Thanks to Hannah and Olivia for all your work. Thanks to Valentine for your work. And thanks to my fellow authors tonight, Roopali and Angela, for being here. And thanks to all of you for coming. It's really great to see students of mine and students I don't know, but who are here. And everybody else, it's good to see you here. What we want to do tonight is to introduce the book. I'll introduce the book, tell you about the book. And then we'll have Angela and Polly share their work with you. And then we'll have some time for questions and answers for that. We could talk about the issue of solastalgia, we could talk about the creation of the book, how hard it was to write, whatever you want to talk about. And we'll be done 7:30-ish. So why this book? What is this book about? The title, Solastalgia, it's a word that was created in about 2009 by a guy named Glenn Albrecht. He's an Australian philosopher. I'll tell you a little bit more about that, how that happens. Ever since I heard the word, which was probably 2010 or so, I've loved it. I love the sound of it. When I heard about what it meant, I thought, man, that's a word for me. That's what I feel. A lot of people have felt that way. Glenn Albrecht, the guy who created the word, he loves to create words. This isn't the only word he's created. He's created a bunch of them around our emotions toward the planet. but no, none of the words he's created has had quite the impact that Solastalgia has. It's really kind of all around the world. I've seen a lot of artwork that's created a lot of response to it. I think it speaks to what a lot of people are feeling about what's happening around us, as we see the places that we love changed around us. Right? The subtitle, An Anthology of Emotion in a Disappearing Word. An anthology, as many of you or most of you probably know, is a collection of works. For this book, it's a collection of creative nonfiction essays. So there's one essay that includes a really beautiful essay by Lauren Aline, a former colleague of mine at JMU, who weaves in 3 poems into her essay. And then there's a lot of great different forms of nonfiction in here too. But it is primarily the nonfiction essay. There's 34 essays divided into 5 sections. Oh, okay. Thank God. As you open the book, one of the first things you see is what we call the dedication page. Dedication page. When you're an author, it's really fun to have a dedication page. Pretty gratifying. In my first book, The End of Night, which is, you can see it on the table back there, I got to dedicate that book to my parents, which meant a lot to me. And then the second book that I wrote, I got to dedicate that to a former Hamline employee. You know. And my third book, I dedicate to my daughter, Hamline. It says, for Hamline, that you know we loved this world. After the dedication page, we come to the epigraphs. Some of my students will know that I love epigraphs. I refer to them as kind of like a free throw in basketball. Nobody's guarding you. Choose a great quote from somebody smart, put it on your paper. Right? It's just one of the best moves a writer can make. 2 epigraphs for this book. They work in a lot of different ways. They work in the sense of time. They work in the sense of diversity. They work in the sense of the span of emotion that I think the word solastalgia denotes. The first one is a quote that I've always loved from the minute I read it, from Aldo Leopold's book, A Sankani Almanac from 1949. The second one comes from a writer named Mary Hegler from 2019, so 70 years later. Leopold wrote, one of the penalties of being old is that you gotta wear reading glasses. One of the penalties of an ecological education is that one lives alone in a world of wounds. Much of the damage inflicted on land is quite invisible to laymen. An ecologist must either harden his shell and make believe that the consequences of science are none of his business, or he must be the doctor who sees the marks of death in a community that believes itself well and does not want to be told otherwise. So that sense of living alone in a world of wounds. 70 years later, Mary Hegler wrote, none of those emotions really get to the heart of what I feel. None of them are big enough. If I'm honest with myself, what I feel truly is love. Hear me out. I don't mean any simple, sappy kind of love. I don't mean anything cute or tame. I mean living, breathing, heart-beating love, wild love. This love is not a noun. She is an active action verb. She can shoot stars into the sky. She can spark a movement. She can sustain a revolution. So I think one of the real appeals to me about solastalgia is that it has its roots in the grief that we feel, living alone in a world of wounds, seeing things that we feel like other people don't see, maybe. How do we deal with that grief? But it doesn't, that's the starting point. It's really about what do we do from there? How do we take our grief? How do we move forward? And it is really at heart a word about love. We feel that grief because we see the places that we love being harmed. So I love that mix of grief and love. From there, the table of contents, as I said, 5 sections of the book. Each section is an answer to the question, what can I do? And so when I'll come back to that. How do you put together an anthology? You ask your friends who are writers, will you write me something? You ask their friends. You start soliciting rich and famous people who don't answer your emails. Gradually, you collect the work that you need. So I finally had 33 essays. I wrote one, so 34. I divided those into 5 sections. As I said, responding to the question, what can I do? The first section is called Grieve and Give Thanks. Second section with Angela and Roopali's essays are, both in Remember and Imagine. The third part, which is a good Minnesota kid who never really learned how to be angry. Part 3 is Love, Get Angry, and Love Some More. Part 4 is Bringing New Life into a Disappearing World. Part 5 is Take Action and Take Care, meaning take action, but also take care of yourself. So there's some real powerful essays in there about how do we take care of ourselves as we're engaged with this issue, with these issues that are so hard on us emotionally. After the table of contents comes the foreword, which I was really lucky to have Glenn Albrecht, the guy who came up with the word solastalgia, write all the way from Australia, a foreword for me, which was really neat. And then comes the acknowledgements page, which is also a really fun thing to write, where you get to say thank you. My first book, it was like 4 pages long, single spaced. It was really fun. This one's a little shorter. But I want to mention 2 things. One is my second paragraph. To my new colleagues at Hamline University, thanks for welcoming me, and thank you to my colleagues who are here tonight. And I said thanks especially to Mike Reynolds. And I would just reiterate that tonight. Thank you, Mike. My last paragraph here is give thanks for a friend of mine. Her name is Hannah Cooper, who we went to college together. We went to college at the same time. I should say that. She went to Macalester. And we were good friends for the first 10 years or so, and then we lost touch. I was living, and she was living here. And we reconnected. At the time I was making this book, it was also the time that she was dying of pancreatic cancer. And it was really a moving experience for me to reconnect with this person that had been a good friend for many years, and to have these long conversations about what we were working on. And so this book is really, I want to say, a labor of love, a work of love. And part of it is my love for my friend who isn't with us anymore, but who was definitely with us when this was coming together. After that, we get to the introduction. I'll read a little bit from the introduction. The stress caused by environmental change, the homesickness we feel while still at home, the lived experience of the desolation of a much-loved landscape. All of these are ways that Glenn Albrecht has defined the word he created to describe this emotion so many feel in response to finding our beloved world so impacted. Feel solastalgia is to feel pain, sorrow and grief, but it is also to recognize that the source of this pain is our love for the places of which we're a part. And in that love lies the energy to defend the world we've known and to create the future we want for our children, grandchildren, and those who will follow. I've already told you a few things about the creation of the book. A great part of the creation was that I actually got to go to Australia and meet Glenn and his wife, Jill. I parlayed an assignment for Audubon magazine. They sent me to Australia to write about the regent honey eater, this bird that's going extinct. And I got to meet Glenn, and I'm laughing because the guy who came up with this word is about the grief that we're feeling. It's like the most jovial, bon vivant guy you'd want to meet. They picked me up at the Newcastle train station in this small blue car that I swear was packed with groceries and like red wine, and they were like, hop in the back. And they're like in their 60s. And just great people, super welcoming and very warm and friendly. It was just really a blessing to get to go see where they lived. Glenn grew up in the west of Australia, in Perth. And then for his professional life as a professor, he moved all the way across the country to the east part, to New South Wales. It's like moving from California to Boston or something. And he loved it. He really loved New South Wales, the Hunter Valley, this 200-mile long valley, just of rich farms and wildlife, really beautiful. But that only lasted for a little while before he started hearing from longtime residents of the Hunter Valley about the desolation they were feeling due to the massive open pit coal mines up the valley. He hadn't seen them. And it sparked this search for a word to describe what they were feeling. He knew the word nostalgia, right? Missing something in the past, a place or a time, but that wasn't quite right. He knew the word. Some of the older people in the room might know the word Koyaanisqatsi from the movie. The Hopi word meaning life out of balance. The Inuit have a great word that means friend behaving strangely, which they're using a lot for the weather these days. And he was really aware too, of course, of the many indigenous people who have seen their worlds destroyed. When you go to Australia, I don't know how many people have been there. The presence of the Aboriginal Australia is, at least in my experience, is really prominent, really powerful, really beautiful. When you talk with them about climate change, they say, yeah, it's terrible, but our world started to end in 1788, when the British showed up. So it's a very powerful, he knew all about that too. Anyway, during the visit, he took me on a couple cool road trips and to see beautiful birds and some. It's sort of funny, you share your honest American desire to see kangaroos. Australians kind of roll their eyes. It's like if somebody came to Minneapolis and they were like, hey, could you guys show me some deer? Okay, great. Here, the kangaroos are everywhere. So he drove me literally to the local junior college campus, parked, and we waited. And within 10 minutes, a bunch of kangaroos hopped past us. And I was like, oh my God, kangaroos. No, that's what train of thought. Oh yeah, that isn't the only place we went. He took me to the open pit coal mines, and it sparked this whole thing, Solastalgia. I don't know if anybody has seen an open pit coal mine. You can imagine there are some open pit mines in Minnesota, but not like this. They're enormous. They have these trucks that you may have seen pictures of where the wheels are like, 2 stories high, and the trucks are on top of those. And the pits are so big that those enormous trucks, when you look across the mines, are like these tiny little Tonka toy truck things. It's hard to wrap your head around it. And then to see the pictures of the land, how it used to look and how it looks now, it couldn't be more stark. So you could see how, I have a visitor, you could see how people who had known that land could be desolated by that, seeing that happen. Restock machine. It's good. All right. I want to get to Angela and Roopali. I just say that go back to the idea of solastalgia. I was born here in this room. I was born in actually in Methodist Hospital, I think. Grew up in Golden Valley. I'm from here. We've always had a cabin in northern Minnesota. Very lucky about that. I've always really loved the natural world. I don't know why. I don't know where that comes from. And I remember when I started to feel like sad about what I was seeing, I think teenage years probably. And when I got to college and I ran into Leopold and his world, living alone in a world. And then you start to learn about all the things that are happening everywhere else. And it's really hard. And I wanted to create a book, this book, Everything I Do, as a way of saying to other people, you're not alone, right? If you feel this way like I do, you're not alone. I feel this way too. And because it can be really lonely sometimes, it can feel really lonely sometimes, but we're not alone. And it was so gratifying to create this anthology and have people write essays. And some people are like, a lot of the writers are, I sort of expect it's going to be good. And then some people, I mean, whether it's not, anyway, just seeing essay after essay come in where I'm just like, thank you so much. This is so great. The 2 essays you're going to hear tonight are like that. Definitely makes me feel not so alone. And being here makes me feel not so alone. It's good. It's good. So thanks again for being here. Let's, I think we'll start with Angela, actually, if that's okay. And, introduce herself too, and read whatever she'd like to, of her whole piece or part of a piece, whatever she wants to. We're pretty informal here. And yeah.
I wore my mechanic's outfit. My father is a mechanic. Am I good? Can you hear me? Does this help at all? No. How about that? Does it look good if I talk to you like this? I'm Angela Pelster. I am a professor in the creative writing department. If any of you have not yet taken a creative writing class, come hang out with us. We have so much fun. And I love it when I have students from other departments who don't know what they're doing and just are like, okay, I'll try this. I'm teaching intro right now, and it is my favorite class to teach. So please come hang out with us if ever you feel like trying something creative. Thank you so much for coming here, all of you. This is amazing. Thank you, Valentine, for making this happen. And Paul, where did you go? Paul, thank you. Thanks for letting me be a part of this super cool project. I really appreciate it. I'm at the age where I can't always tell when I'm going to need my glasses or not. But this essay, I'm going to try it without because I'm not used to them yet. This essay is called The Strangest Sea. I just finished an essay collection all about of my own, all about crisis and evolution. I got really interested in the idea that humans, plants, animals, everything doesn't evolve unless there is some kind of crisis that compels it or requires it to evolve, including behaviorally, all sorts of things. And I just started thinking about, what does that mean that we live in a world that requires change, constant change? And if you don't change, you die. Those are just the rules. We don't make them up. That's just the way it is. And what does that mean about us as humans, that we live in a world that we are desperately in need of change and yet are having a really hard time figuring out how to do that? So this plots some evolution stuff. I haven't read this out loud to an audience before. It might be a hard one to follow out loud, but I hope it is not incredibly boring when I read it out loud, but we'll see how it goes. All right, it starts with an epigraph by Rumi. What you seek is seeking you. Once, when we were fish, we gave up our gills. Because we preferred life over death and continuation over ending, we gave up our bony scales, our fins, the ability to breathe underwater, the ability to see under it too. We gave up the third membrane in our eyes. We gave up the ocean and moved onto land. When we were four-legged, small and rodent-like, long-nosed and scurrying, hurrying between the legs of dying dinosaurs in the dark, we gave up our whiskers, our noses that twitched, our claws. We gave up ears that moved independently, that gathered in sound like a mouth gathers food. We gave up eyes on the sides of our heads. We gave up a home in the night for a life in the light. We slept in trees instead, lived in them, played in them, loved in them, and then we gave up the trees. We gave up swinging from branches, tails that grasped and helped us to balance. We gave up massive jaws that ground and crushed, diets of fruits and leaves, roots, nuts, and seeds, no need to kill. We gave up wide ribs and long guts. We gave up furred bodies. We gave up the forests in favor of savannas. We gave up 4 legs to balance on 2. Then, with 2 legs, we gave up the wandering they had enabled, the long hunt that lasted for days, our miles of running in the hot sun outlasting our prey. We gave up gathering berries and bugs, seeds and tubers. We gave up our sharpened sticks and digging roots from the ground. We gave up tools made of stone. We gave up thick bones and strong, heavy bones. We gave up a hearth in the open, sleeping on the plain and tucked beneath the stars. We gave up waiting on the wind sowing and the land's preferences in growing that variety that once bloomed forth. Always, 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 we gave up our bodies and the earth returned them to us changed to match the changes it had made too. We gave up, the earth gave back. We were given thin-walled, high-vaulted skulls to hold enormous brains perched atop our spines like olives on toothpicks. We were given long legs and short arms, hands that could carry and toss and catch. We were given opposable thumbs, shoulders that helped us throw. We were given the ability to run long distances, to sweat through our pores and keep our bodies cool. We were given fire. The understanding of it, the start and stop and sharing of it. We were given tools of stone, then bronze, then iron, the idea of how to scrape and clean and carry, tools to kill and cut and carve. We were given the impulse to roam, to round that bend, crest the hill. We were given the desire to build a raft, to float and journey, the idea of other lands. We were given melatonin, skin pigmentation that shifted with climate and light exposure. We were given language, symbols, art, stories, writing, imagination, the ability to domesticate ourselves. The earth birthed us and shaped us, made us, remade us. We are of it. We gave and we were also given, buried within our bodies, a default nature of change. Bodies that match the nature of the world they sprang from, to change and change and change or die. At least 5 other human species who lived alongside us for most of our history are extinct now. Our survival was never a given. The earth never promised us that. It hasn't still. Once we were prey. We died beneath teeth, beaks, jaws, and claws like any other animal, afraid of pain and wanting to live. We were given the desire to live. But now, nothing is safe from us. Not the plants, not the animals, not the air, not the water, not the earth itself, not ourselves either. Some of us turn, I turn and turn, and some of us thrash, I thrash, inside the worry of our self-imposed destruction, as if the fear of wolves and lions, snakes, eagles, and leopards has come for us again inside this dark night. But they're all disappearing. It's ourselves we need to escape now. But how do we escape our own bodies, our own nature? Can we even hope to turn away from a self that devours and destroys yet never is full? Can we hope to change again and outrun our own extinction? Or is hope itself only another evolutionary mechanism that once kept us alive, something we must obey whether it will save us or not? Darwin's giant Galapagos turtles could only stand by and watch as he clunked them on the head and ate them. Without the lessons of predators, the tortoises could only obey what the earth had made them to be, fearless. Are we just creatures of hope, made vulnerable by a reality that is no longer true? The evolution of emotion leaves no prototype fossils to track. We hardly understand emotions at all, having just begun to study them in the last century and a half, having for millennia disparaged and discounted emotions, having imagined them something separate from the brains and bodies that produce and experience them. But what some scientists now believe is that basic emotions are the same across cultures and times and experiences. There is evidence that we all know and share some concept of happiness and disgust, anger and distress, surprise and fear. Fear, some say, is the oldest of our emotions, probably one of the first to have evolved in invertebrates, and so the one we share with other animals. We all know fear, but romantic love, acceptance, hope, we're less certain of these, where they come from, what their presence means and how they show up in our lives. We are, for example, the only species who cries when distressed, and tears cried in distress cause different biochemicals than tears shed for other reasons. Our emotions are our bodies, but we don't always know how. The difficulty of being human is that we are our bodies and something more too, animals threaded through with what we've seen and felt and known within each of our individual lives, and then our collective ones also. We are also our culture. If we're blank slates when we're born, then the slates that our lives are written on and the chalk used for that writing are both made of 4.5 billion years of history, and the evolution of our emotions, as well as the evolution of our bodies, got us here too. Hope, wrote Emily Dickinson, is the thing with feathers that perches in the soul and sings the tune without the words and never stops at all. We've repeated that refrain ever since in hopes that it is true. Hope, whatever it is, requires imagination and is tied to the idea of the future. When early humans climbed onto rafts and headed over the waters in search of new homes, they were able to do so because they could imagine land at the end of the expanse of water. Though they could not see the end of it, they hoped for it. Their bodies created it within them. So maybe I should trust the body more. that hopeful animal that brought us here, because the quintessential nature of the earth is its changeability, and the quintessential nature of humanity is too, and yet this body also gives me fear. Maybe I give in to fear more than I should, but the air was so thick with forest ash this summer, so hot with the burning sun, so dry from the rains that would not come that I hardly dared go outside. Even the trees are leaving, migrating, like humans on rafts to new lands, their own so inhospitable. But they can't move fast enough for what we've done. So back and forth I go between hope and fear, between the past that got us here and the nature that past made us to be. Once, I've read, we nearly went extinct before. The climate changed, turned cold and arid, deserts grew, the ice did too, and we started to die off. Between 123,000 and 195,000 years ago, we dropped in numbers from more than 10,000 adults to just a few hundred. Somewhere, tucked inside our bodies, is the DNA map that traces every single human alive today back to that group who survived. We have been here before. Our bodies know it. Our brains and emotions do too. We recognize this place of threat, the fear and despair, hope and imagination it calls us to. I've heard it in the chillest land and on the strangest sea, yet never in extremity it asked a crumb of me. We are afloat on the strangest sea, made of that strangeness even while it threatens to drown us. My body is a raft. We are rafts made of hope, yes, but more than that too. We know fear like all the other animals. And maybe our shared fear points to something shadowy and foreboding about this universe that made us. Or maybe it points to how much we all want to live, how much we love this place, what we need in order to survive it. Fear and hope saved us when we were fish and rat-like vertebrates and early humans in danger of extinction. And despair and imagination did too. I can imagine the end of us. It isn't hard. An earth free of our wounding and a great exhalation of relief. And I can imagine the next evolution of us too, our change into something more glorious, that hoped for land at the end of the water. This moment of possibility rises before us, none of it yet written except in our bones, our brains, our cells, our DNA, our nature, the thing we are. But I don't know where it will take us, what will happen next. I can only listen to the body, the universe that made it, this ancient desire to live. It sounds like prayer, like begging our ancestors to teach us how to give up once again. Thank you.
Angela, that was really great. Next, I want to introduce Roopali Phadke from Macalester College. She's professor and chair of the Environmental Studies program. She wrote a really, well, you'll hear it. I love it. So.
Good evening, everyone. Correction, I was chair.
Oh,
I am free. Yeah. How's that? Is that okay? Thank you. I've had my back to you all, so it's nice to see who's in the room. So I'm Roopali. I'm from Macalester College, where I teach in the Environmental Studies department, and I have been at Mac for almost 20 years, which is a long time. And I am trained as a social scientist. I teach courses in environmental policy and on energy and water. I think Valentine, who was sitting here, I'm not sure where Valentine went, but there Valentine is. I think we have a similar training in political science and geography and anthropology and sociology, and so I bring that to my work. And I say all that to tell you that I was kind of nervous by this assignment that I was given, and I think more than once I said, "Are you sure?" Because it's not the kind of writing I typically do. My research and my writing is more academic and focused on policy. And so this was an invitation to think quite differently. And to write a more personal essay than I usually write. And I'll also say that as I thought about what to write, it was also an invitation to think about where home is for me today, where home has been in the past, to, as Angela so beautifully talked about, to think about hope and fear and tension and backwards and future. And so thank you for the invitation. So I will read you this chapter that is titled Blue, and I hope you can hear me in the back of the room. Yeah. Okay. So Blue. I had just turned 7 when I almost saw a total solar eclipse of the sun in Western India. On February 16, 1980, the first total solar eclipse of the century was observed from India. Our home was in the path of totality. I tried to jog my parents' memory recently about this event, but they don't remember it as vividly as I do. I had been playing with friends when I was urgently driven inside the house into a curtain-drawn room and told to protect my eyes. I remember my mother, my aunt, my grandmother in their long saris climbing up the veranda steps to catch the moment they had special eclipse glasses in hand. Indian scientific annals record that the corona showed up almost symmetrical during that 8 minutes of darkness. It came back to me recently from out of nowhere, and I have few remembrances from these years. I wonder if this event was burned into my mind because I've come to learn that it was a scientific spectacle in our rural region. The Indian Institute of Astrophysics had established an observational camp in the neighboring city of Hubli, where they installed a flash spectrograph. Czech and Yugoslav teams had brought their equipment from Europe in a caravan of cars and trucks across Iran and Pakistan. Advancing astrophysics and what's called the scientific temper of everyday Indians was part of the Great Nehruvian Post-Colonial Modernity Project. And this must have left an impression even on a 7-year-old. I think this memory likely came back to me now because I have been looking up at the blue sky with an aching nostalgia I haven't been able to explain. I have heard that during a total solar eclipse, the sky darkens first to a shade of blue and then to a blackish blue color that occurs at no other time. As a 7-year-old, I felt robbed of seeing that remarkable sky. And I've been searching for that blue for the last 40 years. The lack of blue sky has also brought on my melancholy this year. Angela, you just do. As raging Canadian and northern Minnesota fires brought end of days skies to our home this summer. The smoke thick and hazy enough to hurt your eyes and nose. My neighbor remarked it reminded him of LA in the 50s. Summer skies also reminds me of living in India during my eldest son's first asthma attack as a 4-month-old. The scars of those early breaths still seem to inflict his lungs 20 years later, a plight we share with millions of parents and children growing up around the world. I recall one day in the winter of 2019 when Mumbai's pollution meters were recording an air quality index of over 300. Astonishing weather front pushed out the smoke the next day to reveal a blue sky that made Marine Drive sparkle. It happened again in July 2019 when one local news channel reported that Mumbaiikers woke up, quote, only to be left mesmerized by the beautiful and clear blue sky that soon became one of the most talked about subjects in social media. The reporter went on to write that while such blue skies are very common across the US, the UK, and Europe, many Mumbai residents were struck by this phenomenon of seeing a blue sky. Air quality index that day was 28. And I didn't write this in here. I checked today. The air quality index in St. Paul is 28. In Mumbai today, it's 250. It is true that those of us who live in windswept stretches of the United States have come to expect a blue sky. When my husband and I moved our young family to the north in 2005, I was astonished by how blue the sky could get. The name Minnesota derives from the Dakota Sioux word Minnesota, or sky tinted water. I felt so tricked when I learned that this was not today the blue sky of Providence, but the benefit of a swift wind that carries our pollution southeast of Chicago. It is also not just those of us in Minnesota or North America who are losing our blue skies. A NPR National Geographic project that was called Losing the Eternal Blue Sky chronicled how Mongolia's famed Gobi Desert's blue skies are being choked by air pollution from mining, from droughts, from dust storms. The UN Environment Program established an International Day of Clear Air for Blue Skies in 2020 to draw attention to the fact that 9 out of 10 people across the world breathe highly polluted air. The UN's actions to bring back the blue sky include the things we know about transit, fossil fuel subsidies, ending fossil fuel subsidies, and cleaner cooking fuels. When the wind blows just right on a blue sky day, the leaves of the giant cottonwood tree above my home shake to reveal their iridescent underside. One night, walking toward my home, I recall a blue hour unlike any I had seen. This is the 20 or 30 minutes just after sunset or just before sunrise, when the sun takes on the deepest of blue light. It was like when Haruki Murakami wrote in Dance, Dance, Dance that, quote, the sky grew darker, painted blue on blue, one stroke at a time, into deeper and deeper shades of night. I want to protect the blue, but the most dramatic solution seems paradoxical. Elizabeth Colbert's new book, Under a White Sky, described a solar geoengineered future when carbon emissions are offset through aerosol injections. Colbert writes that white would become the new blue as we tamper with our skies. It's also the premise of Kim Stanley Robinson's new science fiction novel, Ministry of the Future. The novel describes a time when India turns to geoengineering a volcanic explosion to combat deadly heat and drought. They erase the blue sky to cool the subcontinent. And it feels plausible to me, as I've already seen the relentless white skies of the now smoke-filled continent. When I tilt my chin toward the sky, I often wonder if my grandchildren will see the shades of blue I have seen. Will they ache to see the blue hour before and after an eclipse? Our cultures are full of blue sky sayings. Blue skies are consonant with positivity, clarity, possibility, and wonder. Pop psychologists refer to blue sky thinking as the ability to brainstorm with no limits. Nelson Mandela famously wrote that, quote, even behind prison walls, I can see the heavy clouds and the blue sky over the horizon, end quote. I often stare up at the giant World Wildlife Fund billboard near my home, wondering if anyone notices. Against the backdrop of an enormous receding glacier, bright yellow words in bubbly font read, love it or lose it. The idea that remote glaciers and coral reefs will be lost this century seems so accepted that a motorist could pass this billboard daily, spewing the very carbon dioxide that is warming the planet, and not even register the message. Walking on a glacier or swimming among reef fish is still an abstract act for most. Losing the blue sky, the thing for which my home state is named, seems almost unthinkable. Yet it's already gone for a generation of people living in the most polluted regions of the earth. So the Clean Air Act went into effect, saving millions of lives and bringing the blue skies back. There are many alive today who remember LA and New York City choked with smog, and they revel in the changes this law has meant to their everyday lives. COVID lockdowns also showed us dramatically how the air can change. The EU's Blue Sky Recovery Project aims to sustain these impacts. For example, Paris experienced the cleanest air in 40 years during the pandemic. My husband always reminds me that nostalgia is a dangerous sport. In Solastalgia, I think we might find inspiration in a call to action. I've come to recognize and understand why I feel blue when I search for a blue sky. But I've also learned to cherish a blue day, a blue sky day when it happens. I finished writing this essay. I'm mesmerized by the clear, crisp sapphire autumn skies. The red and orange and gold leaves serve to color boost the blue. I remind myself that it's a privilege to experience this. Save the blue sky might be the next slogan that motivates a new generation to fight for cleaner air and for everyone's right to gaze up at the clear blue.
The three of you to come up. I think we have about 10 minutes for questions if people would like to ask you three, or comments, or if you have questions for each other. I would love to start with a question to say, as you wrote this, as a group of people writing about Solastalgia, what was that like? Like, did it change the emotion for you to write through this project?
I mean, for me, writing is a way of dealing with the world, with my emotions, with I mean, I think, and that's one of the great messages of Solastalgia is it's an emotion of response and engagement. And so writing about it, working with it is a form of response and engagement. And that's the way that we deal with that grief, that sadness, is to respond and engage. So writing, working on this really helped me. It's fine.
It was a really hard assignment, and I think it like filled me with melancholy just thinking about it and writing it. But I think I came out transformed at the other end, and I was able to give focus or interpretation to something that just felt like that I didn't have the words for. So I'm grateful for the opportunity to write in. And I have been reading some of the other essays, and there are, I don't know most of the authors, but there are such through lines in the subjects and the voice and the approach. And I'm really struck by how just a word and its definition can create that.
No. I don't know. I still,
You're already writing about change.
yeah, I was writing about change. I think it just kind of kept tossing me back and forth from, like, as I said in the essay, from despair and hope and despair and hope. I think if anything, some of the research that I did, it made me feel closer. The idea that belong here as much as any other animal, which means we can go extinct like any other animal, but also that this is the place that created, really comforting to me. So I think it was nice to spend time thinking of that and sitting in that reality.
Any other questions? How many people in the room had heard this word solastalgia before you learned about Paul's book? Word.
Yeah. It'll be on the midterm exam. The only you guys will know. If you're interested, if you don't have the book, some of the students do it. We are selling them at a discounted price, and it's a pretty unique opportunity to have 3 of the people in the book sign your book if you're interested.
A question for the audience,
Yeah, that's
actually.
great.
Since so many of you are unfamiliar with that term,
Can I actually have you take the mic?
people are unfamiliar with that term. I'm curious if an experience or a place or someone is stirred up for you, and hearing that, a place that you've been that has changed so dramatically, or a relationship to a place. Or I feel like once I encountered the word, I thought of so many examples. So I see some nods I would love to hear, and it can be ever so brief, but I think it would make us feel like we're in great company to know that it resonates.
I have an etymology question, which is, where does the solas come from? Because that sounds like a reference to the sun, but it's not it's not derived from Koyana Satsi, the word. So any knowledge of how that first part?
Yeah, just kind of like it sounds, it's from the same root of solace. So Glenn was trying to say that we take solace from the surrounding nature that we're used to, the blue sky that we're used to, the pine trees that we see, the sounds that we hear, and that we feel grief as we realize that what gives us solace is leaving or is lost. I want to answer Roopali's question, because her essay, I don't know that I didn't read my own essay, but in my own essay, I also mentioned the summer sky that year, it was a couple of years ago, where there was, those smoky days. And like I said, I grew up here. I know it's wrong. It's weird. It's not supposed to be like that. It was so depressing, so hard. And to read her essay about the blue sky is something that I think a lot of us just completely take for granted until it's not there.
So I guess the thing that Solastalgia made me think of was Utah now versus Utah when Edward Abbey was writing about it, and how just like humans have changed with invasive species introduction and just trampling everything.
Being a Utah native, I agree with that. But like, I'm being a little guy looking at the sky, and it was like 10 o'clock at night. It's really little, and now it's
Examples of solastalgia that you may want to share.
Well, I was wondering if
Oh.
someone could repeat
Oh,
what
the-
you said so that we know. What
Will you say that a little louder
what I said.
for the folks in the back?
Oh, I said that I'm from Utah. Liam, that guy, was talking about Utah. But when I was a kid, I'd look up at the sky and sorry, Paul, on my voice. I look up at the sky. Jeez. I'd look up at the sky, and it was much brighter as a kid, and now it's all, yeah, so, or more.
Right.
I think of this like kind of run I did recently that it was really, really beautiful out. We had blue skies and it was absolutely gorgeous. I was like caught like this overwhelming like amount of grief. I was like, what's so saddening about this is that it's land. And that's a really hard concept to deal with. And that day in particular, it was one of the days that we had warmer temperatures. And so I was appreciating a day that was during warmer temperatures and trying. It's sad because you love it, you know. So could you guys talk more about like, how that like, from a place of life and the place you're experiencing?
could start. I think you're totally right. And I'll just share a thought, and I don't know if this is familiar for anyone, but I would say for the last few years, I have found myself in a thought process that whether it's like the run that you talked about or something that I'm doing that just feels so perfect, I am trying to tell my brain to remember it as it's happening. That I'm trying to notice all of these details because I want to be able to retrieve it. And if I go through that process of recognizing with gratitude with how amazing this moment is, somehow it feels like when I need it, I'll be able to find it. And I find myself doing that kind of frequently when that swim is wonderful or that sunset is glorious. And it's often I'm not alone, I'm with people. That was a practice that I didn't do 20 years ago or 30 years ago. And I think it is a little bit of a rewiring that's happening, maybe not just in my brain, but in many of us, as we come to terms with the fragility of the world as we've come to experience it. And so that to me does feel like love.
Started doing that too. Talking it in. I think, I'm not sure if this is answering your question, but what it made me think of is that the more I understand how things got to be where they are, as in all living creatures, all life, the more I feel like I belong, like humans aren't some evil creature on the earth. Even the destruction that we do, that part of what we're trying to figure out is our nature and how to be in this place that made us in a way that works with it. And so, for example, I was reading some stuff about what biologists think the first blooming flower looked like. And they took all of these thousands and thousands of data points, put them together, and the thing that they came up with closest was a magnolia bloom, like the ones that grow in North Carolina. And I had actually found that out literally as I was sitting under a magnolia tree. And it just felt like this moment where I was reaching through time. And all of a sudden I was like, I belong here. This is where I'm from. This is the place that made me. And to me, that's the thing that gives me hope, is that, collectively we have this ability to make change and be something bigger. And now I'm just like speaking in cliches, but it's really magical. It's just so magical to place yourself in time and understand everything that came before, or at least try to, of course.
It's a really rich question. Thanks for that, CC. It makes me think about an interview I did with a former colleague of mine who's an expert in British Romantic literature. And he'd written a book called Against Happiness, A History of Melancholia. And he told me this story. It was one of those great interviews where we met at a bar and we're drinking beer and he's telling me all this great stuff and I'm recording it. There should be more of those experiences. And he said, it's like when I was at this concert last week of the Carolina Chocolate Drops, this amazing band. And I was standing there and surrounded by people. And its music is so amazing. And I realized that I had tears running down my cheeks because the moment was so beautiful and so amazing. I was so alive and I was crying. And I just think that mix of love and it's so beautiful that it's sad is pretty powerful, really powerful. And it's something that I think Solastalgia gets at. It taps into the power of those emotions that we have.
That's a really nice note. I thank everybody for coming. I particularly want to thank all the students who helped prepare for this, students of Paul's who were so excited to see this book finally, and also who spent the last week setting up this maze of eating in connection. And I think it's filled with great examples of things that people love and put all this care into exhibiting. And also a lot of this is about the future and about climate and thinking about that balance. So if you haven't had a chance to explore it, we'd love to invite you to go in as we go out. We'd also love to invite you to come back. We have another book launch on March 30th for another edited collection, A Darker Wilderness, Black nature writing, which will be fabulous. It was supposed to be last week and it got pushed ahead because of the snow. And next week, we have a lot of events going on in relation to a week theme here on campus called Ways of Being Home. We'll be doing an event on Monday that's related to the hostile terrain that's about being home in a world of borders. And coming up over the next few weeks, you can see all the lists on the way out. We have panels on reparations and how it is that we are becoming better neighbors and learning how to live in the world of wounds with a domain of repair. How do we participate with this love by making it possibly a place we could continue to live? So thank you for helping us launch our first really big in-person event on our environmental justice theme. It's been really wonderful to have you all in the space. Thank you for giving us an occasion to do so. Flag them down to sign your books.
I saw that today.